Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In my statement to the IAEA Board of Governors this morning, I highlighted the importance of our work in promoting peaceful applications of nuclear science and technology and to help countries to achieve their development goals. The main focus of the IAEA Technical Cooperation Program last year was nuclear safety, which accounted for a quarter of total spending. Health and nutrition was the second main area of support requested by the member states, followed by food and agriculture. I highlighted another example of IAEA's ability to react quickly to crisis in member states. We dispatched 4 mobile digital X-ray units and related equipment to Ecuador after the recent earthquake. The IAEA continues to help countries in Latin America and Caribbean fight the Zika virus, including through the use of sterile insect technique. The IAEA nuclear application laboratories in Seibersdorf, near Vienna, play an important role in the international response to diseases such as Zika. I welcomed recent contribution by member states to the cost of renovating the labs, which will enable us to move ahead with this extremely important project. On nuclear security, I encouraged all countries to be represented at ministerial level at the IAEA International Conference on Nuclear Security, which will start in Vienna on December 5th. The presence of ministers will help to maintain the momentum achieved in recent years in putting nuclear security high on the international agenda. I presented my report on Iran's implementation of its nuclear-related commitments under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. It summarizes the verification and monitoring activities that the agency has conducted under relevant UN Security Council and IAEA Board of Governors resolutions. These activities are consistent with the agency's standard safety safeguard program practices. The report presents the fact in an objective and factual manner and includes relevant information which the agency can share with member states. We are in the early stage of a process which requires constant and careful attention from all stakeholders. All stakeholders have worked to make implementation possible. In the coming months and years, the continuing strong commitment of all parties will be needed to make implementation sustainable. Finally, I expressed serious concern about the nuclear program of North Korea. It is deeply regrettable that the DPLK has shown no indication that it is willing to comply with the Security Council resolution adopted in response to the nuclear test earlier this year. I strongly urge North Korea to implement fully all relevant IAEA and Security Council resolutions. The agency remained ready to contribute to the peaceful resolution of the DPLK nuclear issue by resuming its verification activities once a political agreement is reached among countries concerned. I will now be happy to take questions, answer your questions.
Thank you. My name is Ken Udaga from Kyoto News Japanese News Agency. I have 2 questions. One question about DPRK. And you mentioned that here in the statement that the serious concern about the nuclear program of DPRK. And recently, what activity, especially, do you like to do mention about it? For example, 38 North reported recently new evidence of probable plutonium production at the Yongbyon. And do you have any new information, update information about the nuclear activities of DPRK? And another question is about the safety requirements. Nuclear safety requirements. And here in the statement it's mentioned that leadership and management for safety and safety of research reactors. And what concretely will you focus, are you focusing on in these safety requirements? Thank you.
First, regarding the DPRK, I stated that we have concerns, but as you know well, since April 2009, we do not have the inspectors on the ground. However, we are monitoring the situation mainly through satellite imagery. And we have observed the activities that indicate that the disablement of the DPRK resumed the activities of 5 megawatt reactors or enrichment or reprocessing. However, as we do not have the inspectors on the ground, we are only observing through satellite imagery. We cannot state for sure, but we have indications of certain activities through the satellite imagery. For the safety requirements, reflect the lessons learned from Fukushima Daiichi accident.
Any other questions?
Setsuko Inaki from Nippon Television Network. I can just perhaps follow up on the safety requirement questions. What exactly is the main change, especially in terms of the management system? What was before and what was now? What's the main point? Thank you.
Our safety people, and this is the safety standard is a very precise and complex document. I think it is better to provide information later rather than myself explaining without a clear understanding of the exact content of the safety standard.
Yes, we have a media briefing on these requirements tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Yes, it would have been nice if he had said something about it.
Any other questions?
Sorry, DG. After his meeting with you last month, Ali Akbar Salehi said that you'd both been getting dictionaries out in an attempt to resolve any potential differences of interpretation of the JCPOA. Have there been differences of interpretation, and if so, what have they been? Thank you.
Technical, yes, I had a meeting with Mr. Salehi, and we had a meeting with other members of the JCPOA, and technical discussions and exchanges are ongoing. And it covers some various aspects contained in the JCPOA.
You can't be more specific than that?
There are a number of technical aspects, but these are the issues under discussion. I cannot share the details.
I have an additional question about the DPRK's activities. You mentioned that indication of certain activities. What kind of indication of certain activities have you found?
Resumption of the activities of the 5 megawatt reactor, the expansion of centrifuge related facility, and reprocessing. These are some of the examples of the areas. And indications are movement of vehicles, steams, discharge of warm waters or transport of material. These are the examples of indications.
Markus Il from the Nikkei. In your opening statement, you mentioned regarding the peaceful use of nuclear technology that a diagnostic kit was provided to Ecuador. How many diagnostic kits would be necessary to make an actual impact, and how much would that cost? Thank you.
Even one diagnostic kit is very effective. I do not know the exact number of Zika virus case, but in Ebola case, one kit can deal with 3,000 diagnoses. And the kit is this height, this like size of refrigerator. And the cost is below between 50,000 and 100,000 euros. So it depends on what's attached to the equipment. But it is by that dimension. It is not million, it is not hundreds of millions, it is 50,000, 100,000 euros. And the size is not this house, like a bit smaller than this. So there are smaller ones, but usual size is a bit smaller than this. And it depends what additional equipment you attach to that. But it doesn't make much difference as an order of the price.
So regarding the actual number of units that would be useful, even if it's not an exact number, just for a country like Ecuador? Yes.
It depends on the country, but being able to diagnose 1,000 of people is clearly a net gain and addition to the existing capacity.
Thank you. Yes.
Kazuto Sasa from NHK. I have one question about DPRK and one on Iran. You just mentioned through satellite image, you have seen like some movement of vehicles and also like some steams and so on. Can you say such movement are more active nowadays, like compared to their activity seems to be more like intensified, or can you say something about how much work they're doing? And also the question about Iran is how do you evaluate the way Iran has been cooperating so far? And is there any difficulties or challenges regarding the checking Iran's activities? Thank you.
First, with respect to DPLK, we have been monitoring the situation of Yongbyon after our inspectors left the country in April 2009. And I have explained the activities that we have observed and indications that we have seen. It is not possible to tell the trend, because sometimes we observe certain activities. On other occasions, we don't observe these activities. And it is not possible to tell which is the trend. What we can say is that we observe the indications of activities, and that indicate the resumption or ongoing activities of facilities in Yongbyon. And the nature of the activities of our inspectors in Iran, or difficulties that we face. This is some very important work for the IAEA, and it increases the workload of our inspectors. And we have just established the Iran office, and our inspectors are really very busy. We do not qualify difficult, whether it is difficult or easy, because what we are analyzing is the facts, and we are not analyzing the attitude of our counterparts, whether they are Iranians or Japanese or anyone. We are focusing on facts, and we do not provide assessment of the attitudes of our counterparts.
Just to follow up on the Iran issues, in your recent report and then also in the opening statement today, you mentioned that under the additional protocol that you made site visits and visited different locations. Could you say that one of them was a Parchin?
I stated that the activities are being implemented in accordance with the established IAEA safeguard practice. And the established IAEA safeguard implementation practice with regard to the additional protocol is that we do not share the details. So I said that we have had complementary access to the facilities and locations, but I cannot share more details.
Any final questions?
Mr. Amano, can you
Yes.
Can you tell us what the indications you've seen in North Korea, what they point to?
Education.
The indications, the activities you've seen, what do they point to in North Korea?
The indications that we have obtained in the past is some of the activities related to 5 megawatt reactors, expansion of the enrichment facilities, and activities related to reprocessing. These are the indications. These are the activities.
So the totality of these activities, do they tell you anything?
Pardon?
The totality of these activities, all these activities together, do they tell you something in particular?
All the activity, the totality, the total.
These we have been monitoring the situation after we left Yongbyon, and these are the activities that we have observed since then.
So I'm not clear on exactly on the timeline involved, because you're talking about things you've seen since 2009, since the agency left. So I think for us what's particularly interesting is what you have seen since your last comments on this. I mean, I particularly remember your comments in around September, October time when you said that you'd seen some activity, you didn't really specify what it was. So, but what have you seen since then, for example? Is any of what you're saying applied since then, or is it since 2009?
We may share it to the members of the board in the next report, or not. We have not decided, but we do not share that information. What we say that we are observing through satellite imagery. We have some indications, and in the future we will provide a report to the General Conference, and some information may be contained in the new report.
Okay, but you've already given us this information, and we're just trying to understand it. So we're just trying to understand if this information is particularly recent. In order
to facilitate your understanding, I am saying in general, we have the indication of these activities related to 5 megawatt enrichment facility, reprocessing facility, and discharge of water, movement of a vehicle. In a general term, I am not saying when and which indication. And the information which we will provide information that we can to the Board of Governors in the future.
But just with the information you have at this point, do you think that the nuclear capability to create once again the more nuclear weapons at the DPRK has increased? What is your judgment?
It is not a mandate to monitor weapon activities. We are monitoring peaceful activities.